Alright guys, so this is the start of Unit 6, which is going to be our unit on World War II. Okay, so I know we had spring break, taking a break from that. So again, I just want to take you back. Okay, so remember previously we had seen World War I, and we saw kind of the economic collapse of Germany. And remember kind of the United States and most of Europe is entering into the Great Depression. So remember at the end of Great Depression, and we're going to see these issues kind of leading to World War II. Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind as we move forward and see how they connect together. All right, so remember going back, looking at problems in Europe after World War I. So remember the Treaty of Versailles overall left many Europeans unhappy. Okay, remember the United States did not sign this treaty. We signed our own separate treaty with Germany because we thought this was kind of unfair. So again, particularly looking at Germany, they're going to suffer the most. We already talked about their economy kind of collapsing, and that's why Germany had to end the war during World War I. And afterwards, their economy is going to be completely devastated. If you remember that one picture that we looked at where the lady was burning German money because it was more valuable as firewood than to actually spend. Okay, Germany has to give up their empire, so any land gained during World War I, which is the map that you see on the screen, we see that Europe is kind of broken up into these smaller chunks here as these big empires that were built during World War I, they are forced to give up their land. Remember, they also had to make reparation payments because they were found to be at fault for World War I and over an unstable government. Okay, so Europe is already in this turmoil. We see this economic collapse as we move into the Great Depression. Okay, and this is kind of setting up, okay, kind of this perfect storm that's going to allow these leaders to rise up in Europe. Okay, so all throughout Europe, we're going to see the rise of a totalitarian government. Okay, simply looking at that word, okay, breaking it down, they are a total leader. Okay, when we look at a totalitarian leader, another way that we often think of this is going to be like a dictatorship. Okay, so you're definitely going to want to get the formal definition down here. Okay, so a single party, or usually, typically, you see that like a single person takes power. And it's going to be everything. When we talk about that totalitarian leader, again, total leader, they're going to control economic, social, and cultural lives. Okay, so it's much more than being a political leader. And we're going to see them rise to power after World War I. So again, kind of that perfect storms of economic issues, social issues that allows these individuals to rise into power. Okay, Europe was kind of in a desperate situation. Okay, so again, don't necessarily have to write down this graphic, but it sets kind of the tone, and it's a really good image of different ways that totalitarian leaders got control. Okay, they set and establish a very clear ideology. Okay, so what are the goals? Again, they maintain this idea of control, and the super important is the way they enforce it, and it's usually through fear, okay, through force, through this idea of censorship. They only are getting limited information, and it's the information that that leader wants you to get. Propaganda is going to be huge, especially when we look at the rise of Hitler. Propaganda is going to be one of his biggest tools into kind of getting the control of the people. Oftentimes when we see a totalitarian leader, they're very dynamic, they're very charismatic, they're outgoing, well-spoken. And again, kind of the state of control, these are all the different things that they're taking over, okay? So again, that's something that you have to write down, but this shows kind of the span of what a totalitarian leader controls. All right, so looking at this, you can almost set this up. And again, it doesn't 100% go in chronological order, just because we look at things in a little different order. But this almost sets up as a timeline that we're going to look at, okay? So one of the first totalitarian leaders we're going to look at is going to be Adolf Hitler, okay? So Hitler's kind of rise to power. As you probably know if you've ever studied him before, Hitler was not very successful in life. He was a failed art student. He was not accepted into the school that he wanted to go into. And really, he used and joined the German army as a way for him to move up, okay? So Hitler is going to become Chancellor of Germany, and he was a part of the Nazi or the National Socialist Political Party, Okay, so this is going to be his stepping stone as he kind of takes control. Again, just a little bit of background. Again, he wasn't even born in Germany. He was going to be born in Austria, but again, he was not accepted into that Austrian art school. Core beliefs, again, obviously, during this time period as Hitler rises to power, we're also going to see the Holocaust take place, and that's because he was anti-Semitic. Okay, he was very much so against Jewish people, and he actually blamed them for Germany's collapse of the economy because they were holding on to money, not spending money, very stingy with money. That was kind of the stigma for that. So he kind of blamed them and had a strong hatred towards Jewish people, which will lead to the Holocaust. Again, big things. So again, make sure you know he's with the National Socialist Party or the Nazi Party. And again, they had a fear of communism and a very rough relationship. So that already gives you a hint, okay? So remember what area was predominantly communist at this time was going to be Russia. So that already gives you a hint when we look at the leader of Russia at this time period. They're going to have a very kind of fearful, tiptoeing around each other relationship. Okay, again, kind of like what we looked in the graphic. How does Hitler take control of Germany? Again, the idea of being a totalitarian leader, okay? Big, huge one that he's going to use is propaganda. And he specifically targeted the youth, okay? He would create the Hitler Youth, and he would have almost like Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts, but it was kind of indoctrinating or brainwashing these children to believe that ideology that Hitler wanted to set up. Okay, one of the big goals early on, remember after World War I, we wanted to address the causes. So our big focus was going to be dismantling the army. Germany is doing the opposite at this point. Hitler encourages the rearmament or the building up of the army. So he's already starting to break the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, so as we move forward, kind of looking at this timeline into starting World War II, guys, this is our first red flag. Okay, we know he's breaking the Treaty of Versailles, so I want you to think about it. Who should be stepping in at this point? Okay, so remember, think about post-World War I. Who do we set up to prevent these types of things? Okay, so keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay, he had the SS or the secret police, again, using that terror tactic to control people. Churches were under that propaganda, youth groups like we talked about. And one of his beliefs, so even though he was Austrian, he believed that people of German descent were superior. So again, this is where we get that stigma of the blonde hair, blue eyes. That was like the German ideal, okay? Even though Hitler did not meet any of those requirements, he thought that Germans were superior, and that means they could treat anybody any way they wanted and could eliminate people who were lesser than. Again, kind of hinting at this goal of the Holocaust coming up. Okay, so again, don't necessarily have to write this down because we already talked about it. But again, one way that Hitler kind of rose to power, like how did a man like Hitler come to power? The country was desperate, okay? And when they started rebuilding the army, this starts creating jobs again. Think about the United States at World War I. Production increases. This promotes jobs, okay? So a lot of Germans, when Hitler's rising power, were grateful for the jobs that he was creating, okay? So again, very early on, very popular with the people. Okay, and remember, so the stigma of this, building of the army, remember that violates the Treaty of Versailles. All right, so we're going to jump through. We're going to look at the Soviet Union. Okay, the leader you need to know with the Soviet Union is going to be Joseph Stalin. Okay, so he's a communist leader, so already we know they're going to have a weird relationship. So Stalin and Hitler have a weird relationship. Very similar tactics as far as fear and massive propaganda. We also see that kind of Stalin was going to be a very paranoid person, and he actually purges his own political party of about 1 million deaths because he thought people were traitors. So very paranoid, very power-hungry man. And again, he wanted to transform the Soviet Union into a government-owned industrial power. So again, kind of that communist ideal where the government controlled and everybody ideally contributed equally. Okay, over on Italy's side, you need to know Benito Mussolini. He was going to be the leader of the fascist party. Again, you're going to see very similar kind of techniques of these totalitarian leaders. He outlined any political party. Okay, so again, the only political figure you could kind of believe in and support was going to be Mussolini. He took over the press. So again, they're very controlling over the information that's going to get out to people. He also had a secret police, and again, you're going to see this idea of indoctrination of the youth. Definitely did not want strikes. Most totalitarian leaders are going to be really against labor unions because they're afraid those people are going to organize against them. And then Japan is going to be a little bit different, okay? So when we see Japan, and we're looking at kind of these big players that are rising up to participate in World War II, Japan is going to be different because Japan does not have a totalitarian leader. The military is in control of the country, okay? So they are shaping civilian, so regular people, and military policy. And their leader, who's an emperor, so sort of like a king, Emperor Hirohito, he's only a political symbol. Okay, so yes, he sort of has the authority to make this decision, but it's all being backed up by the military. So he's almost like a puppet. He's like an action figure doing what the military tells him to do. Okay, so Japan is going to be the only one different out of the ones that we talked about. Okay, so Japan does not have a dictator. They're backed by military power. Okay. So we're looking at that. We see the rise of power. We see the rise of Hitler. And we're going to see the steps that it takes for Europe to break out into war. Okay. The first baby steps. Okay. So we already talked about Germany is building up their military, which went against the Treaty of Versailles. Okay. In March of 1938, Germany is going to annex Austria. Okay, remember, those two were on the same side during World War I. And Austria basically is willingly taken over by Germany. And that is this term known as Anschluss. Okay, take note of that. That's going to be important in your warm-ups and in the documents that you do. Okay, so no conflict. Austria willingly joins up with Germany. Again, this is violating the Treaty of Versailles. So again, we're at strike 2. Nobody is stepping in yet. So again, I want you to think about who should be stepping in at this point when the Treaty of Versailles is violated, okay, and think about some reasons why this organization is not stepping in. Okay, so strike 2 on Germany, violating the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, then Germany is going to march into the Rhineland. Okay, we're going to take a second to look at the map. The Rhineland is going to be this chunk of land right here. So here's the Rhine River. Okay, and it borders with Germany and then France. Okay, so they cross the Rhine River and they start building up military too close to France. This is going to make France very nervous. Okay, this is strike 3. Germany is not supposed to bring troops into here because, again, look at who that's going to threaten. That is a direct threat to France. Okay, so when they bring the military into the Rhineland or across the Rhine River into this area, this violates the Treaty of Versailles again. Okay, so Hitler is already getting power hungry. Hitler has taken over Austria. Hitler has moved his military into the Rhineland, moving as a direct threat to France. Okay, Hitler also wanted control of Czechoslovakia. Okay, specifically, they wanted to take part of Czechoslovakia that Germany had owned before World War I. Okay, very important. And guys, this is going to be a little bit different because we're not physically in class to label a map. But it's really important to know. So this horseshoe right here, okay, the Sudetenland, they wanted to take that over. Okay, so they take control of that. France and Britain, okay, now we're all on high alert. So again, we're beyond strike 3. We're into strike 4 and 5. We know Hitler is up to something at this point. Nobody's really stepping in, but France and Britain are on high alert. Okay, last one that we're going to look at today is appeasement. Okay, we did not want to go to war. We don't really want Hitler to take power. Okay? But Britain is going to enter into an agreement known as the Munich Pact. Okay? To basically give Hitler the Sudetenland. So they cave in and they give him, Hitler, this horseshoe of land. Okay? So they give up the Sudetenland in the Munich Pact. And a pact is like an agreement. Okay? France and Britain, okay, give into this demand. Okay, so it's really between France, Britain, and Germany, okay, to give up that chunk of land because they wanted to avoid war. Okay, they wanted peace in our time. Okay, so this goes into this idea of appeasement. Okay, the idea of, oh, surely if we just give Hitler this one chunk of land, this little horseshoe of Czechoslovakia, surely he will not invade anywhere else, right? Okay, so we look at this cartoon representing appeasement. So we have the appeaser in the middle. Okay, he's got a lollipop, and we see this serpent monster, okay, with the swastika on it, the Nazi symbol. Okay, and clearly when those lollipops run out, we know that that monster is not going to just give in. And the example I always love to use of this is when you take a child to the grocery store and they throw a fit. The idea of appeasement, if you're appeasing that toddler throwing a fit because they want that lollipop, when you give in, okay, to their tantrum and give them the lollipop, the next time they go to the store, what are they going to do? Because they know they're going to get a lollipop. Okay, so again, keep this in mind with appeasement. We give in to Hitler giving them this chunk of land, hoping this is going to prevent the war, but we know Hitler's going to be greedy. This will not last very long. Okay, so a lot of kind of key things to highlight. Definitely highlight this term appeasement. So we give in hoping that things will go our way. And the official term for this agreement is going to be the Munich Pact, where we give up the Sudetenland. Okay, so again, the goal is to get peace in our time, because we want Hitler to stop imperializing. But again, end result, this is not going to work. Hitler not only takes the Sudetenland, he is going to take the rest of Czechoslovakia. Okay, so again, we're moving into strike 5 and 6 of breaking the Treaty of Versailles. Again, not going to label the map, but we're going to look at kind of the specific moves here of Hitler kind of taking control.